Hello guys and welcome to this new video on arrays. An array is a data structure that stores homogeneous collection of items. What homogeneous means, it is a same type of items. For example, if you take an array of integer data type, it can only store integers, or if you take an array that is a string array, it can only store strings. In simple words, an array is a data structure that stores data of the same type. And if we have to see a representation of an array, imagine it as some kind of boxes. Let's say these boxes. An array stores data in a contiguous memory allocation, which means if the value is stored at 0, and then the next value will be stored at the next location. Which makes it easier for access in array. And also remember that if there is an array of size 5, the index values for that array would be n-1, which is nothing but 5 minus 1 would be 4. So here we see that there are 5 index values here. These are the index values, which means for every array the index starts from 0 and ends at n-1. So this is an array of size 6, which means it has 5 index places. Here we can see that this is a simple representation or a graphical representation of an array. Now if you have to implement this in a Java code, let's see an implementation. Let's take an array of string, let's say name. A simple way to create an array would be by simply assigning or initializing the values right next to the array itself. Let's say James, comma, let's say John, comma, let's say. Here we have created an array called names with a data type string, which means it can only store strings. So if you try to store something else like a number, we'll see that it's not gonna work. So for example, if I actually try to print the array, to print an array, we can either use the for loop, or we can also use an enhanced for loop. Let's say for where the data type is string, so let's take a string. Let's create a name from the array names, and let's try to print the name E. Let's say we are trying to print a name. This here is an enhanced for loop where we use a new value that is from the data type of this value and the array name, and in between we use a column. And if I try to run the program now, we can see that there is a type mismatch and we cannot convert from int to string, which means an array can only store values that are of string. Now if I remove this and if I run the program again, we can see the output would be the name is James, the name is John, and the name is Smith. Here we are iterating through the array by using the for loop, which is an enhanced for loop. Let's just remember that this is called an enhanced for loop. Now this is one way to create an array. Now if you want to create an array in a different way, or the second way to create an array would be, let's create an array for lower numbers. Let's just create the array, and now we need to instantiate this array, and we do that by creating a new value. Let's say roll ns is equals to new integer, and the size of the array, let's say 4. Now we have created an array of the size 4. We can also directly assign the values for each index of an array, which means the size of the array is 4, which means there are 3 indexes. So if I want to assign a value at the 0th index, I can do it easily by just doing roll ns of 0, or the 0th index, is equals to, I can say the value 9. Now I have stored some value on 9. So we have 4 indexes, so let's store them one by one. Let's do 1, 2, and 3. Now I can store 5, let's say 2, let's say 3. Now again, if I use an enhanced for loop to print this, or I'll just change this and loop to roll is to roll nf. Now I'm trying to print the roll number, so let's just change the output roll, and I'll change here again roll. So if I try to print this again, if I run the program, okay, and we also need to change it to int because the type of this array is an integer. So if I just clear the terminal and if I try to run the program now, we can see that we have stored the array as these values. It is 9, 3, 2 and 5. We know that the array size is 4, so there are 4 values and we have stored the values directly. We can also do it by using the for loop itself. Again, this is to display, so let's leave this loop, and if you use a for loop again, let's say for an int I is equals to 0 because the index starts at 0, and let's say I is less than the array's name is roll numbers dot length, let's say length, and we also need to I plus plus. So we're trying to print the array. The length of the array itself would be 4, so less than 4 is nothing but 3, so we are starting from 0 when you're trying to store the values. Let's just store the values 0, 1, 2, 3 in those indexes. So if I take roll numbers of I, let's just store the value I in that array. Now if I try to run the program, we can see that we have stored the I value, which is nothing but we are starting from 0. We have stored 0, we have stored 1, we have stored 2, and we have stored 3. Here we use the length method or the length function to get the length, and we use the I is less than the array name dot length value to use a loop to fill the values in. Now this is another way. We can also use, or we can also do another way, which is called user defined arrays, where we give the size and also the values within the array. So if you try to create that, let's create, and for that we need to use the scanner class. Scanner class in Java is used to take user input. So let's create a scanner class. Let's create now, let's just say system.in. The system.in within the parentheses is used to take input from the terminal. If I clear the terminal just for now. Now if I have created scanner class, now I want to take values. So we know that we have an array called roll numbers of the data type integer. Now I'll create a scanner. So let's create an out. Let's just say enter the array size. So then let's create sc.nextIn. NextIn to take integer values. And then just for safety, let's do sc.nextLine. Now we have taken the array size. We have taken the size as input. Now let's just create or instantiate the array itself. The array is obviously roll numbers. So let's create an array of integer roll numbers. Let's instantiate it, or we can just directly instantiate it here by is equals to new roll numbers, new int of the size that we have taken as its input. Now let's create a for loop in I is equals to 0 and I is less than the size that we have given as its input, and then I plus plus. Now let's use the scanner class to take input again, and let's assign the values to the array itself. Array of the index I, which is starting from 0, let's assign the value of sc.nextInt, which is nothing but the input value from the user himself. We already have the enhanced for loop to print all the values within the array. So let's try and run the program now. We can see that we have in the terminal enter the array size. So let's enter a size of 4. And also we need to enter the values, let's say 5, 6, 7, and 8. And if we try and print the array, we see that we have stored the values 8, 7, 6, 8 within the array. So let's, for better understanding, let's create an sout line to actually prompt the user to write something. So if I take sout, let's say enter the roll number. So if I run the program again, it gives enter the array size. Let's do array of size 2 and then enter the roll number. Let's say 78 and 79. So we can see that we have stored the values within the array 78 and 79. This is a simple video to understand about arrays in Java. There are 3 ways to create an array in Java, which is directly mentioning right by its name, or we can create an array and then we can instantiate it and we can use the for loop to populate that array, or we can also use the user defined values like the size itself. We can create and instantiate that array with the size, and then we can take the values again by using the scanner class, and we can store the user defined values within that array. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.